So our agenda today, we're going to do an overview of accountability, and then we're going to go through each of the 3 domains. Right? So very quickly, a reflection, and this is just a whip around. So why is the Texas accountability system valuable? Why do we have accountability?
Make sure our students are learning.
Make sure our students are learning.
Meeting the standards.
Say that again?
Meeting the standards.
Make sure they're meeting standards. Anyone else?
The bar of success is the same for everyone.
Our bar of success is the same for everyone, essentially. Right? So we've got to have some type of standard. We've got to have some type of way to measure if what we're doing is producing the outcomes that we want. Right? So our objective today, you will understand the student outcomes valued by the Texas accountability system, and then identify ways in which your work stream impacts those outcomes. And we're going to look specifically at some of the data tables that you are going to see when your 2024 accountability ratings come out. On August 13th, they will be with the district. On August 15th, they will be released publicly. So I know some of you are anxiously awaiting that. I know some of you are asking, where's my 2024 estimate? You have less than a month and you will get the real thing. All right, so we like to start here with our Lone Star governance motto. And so this is what our school board uses for their governance. And it says that student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors change, starting with me. And so we're going to look at what are the adult behaviors that are going on within your buildings and what is the data telling us. Right, so just overview of our domains. We have, of course, domain 1, our student achievement. Domain 2 is school progress, which has 2 parts. Part A is our academic growth. Part B is our relative performance. And then domain 3 is our closing the gaps. So have a quick table talk. Which domain of the system do you feel you know the most about? Domain 1, 2A, 2B, or domain 3? All right, very quickly, who says that they know the most about domain 1, student achievement? Right? Got a few people. What about domain 2A, academic growth? All right, one in the possible. Right? What about 2B, relative performance? Which one do you know the most about? Okay, and then domain 3, closing the gaps. All right, so at this time, I'm going to just go ahead and let the principal from Forest Brook come up here and continue to do the entire presentation because she knows the most about all the domains. So she can come, she is our resident expert. So if you have any accountability questions and you can't reach anyone in AAC, there you go. All right, so as you can see, I left up here the high school calculations for these domains. The reason I did that, especially for you all as middle school principals, for you in domain 1 student achievement, STAR is 100%. But you're sending those 8th graders to high school. And when they get to high school, their college career and military readiness counts the same as their STAR. So those students are going to have to be on grade level, above grade level, because they're expected to make the grade on their SAT, on the TSI assessment, on the ACT, take dual credit courses, AP exams and pass them, IB courses and pass those exams. And so you all are setting the foundation for what in our district our high school accountability scores look like. So I want to make sure that you're thinking about that. So when we're saying meets grade level, when they get to high school, they need those things so that they have enough room in their schedule to pass their STAR the first time so that they can be in a CTE coherent sequence of classes because they have the room in their schedule. And so that's why I didn't just leave up what you all are going to be rated on. I want you to think about those students that you're sending to the high schools and what our high schools are going to be doing with them. Right, so we have our component score scaling. So these are the calculation in the domains using those student outcomes. And it has to be scaled to be comparable. So of course we know we have our A through F system. Same thing goes with our component scores and their scaling. So overall grade, it's the weighted average of the scale scores. So 70% is going to be the best of domain 1, 2A, or 2B, whichever one is the highest. Domain 3 is going to be 30%. It's always there. Closing the gaps is always there. You do not get a choice. All right, and then we also have the forced D and the forced F that was introduced in our accountability system. Essentially, if you have, if you get a D rating or an F rating in, Lavecki, correct me, 3 out of the 4, then they force you to a D or to a F. It doesn't matter if your score would calculate to say a C. They're going to force you to a D because the majority of your grades were in that D or F range. All right, at this time, would like for you to go to A4E to pull up your data tables, because one of the things that we want you to be familiar with is when those accountability scores come out on August 13th, August 15th, released publicly, we want you to be familiar with those data tables and what you're going to see, so that when you get that data for 2024, you're able to look at them. So you're going to go to A4E. Down at the bottom in the blue bar is Documents, and then you're going to click on the Accountability folder and Accountability Ratings 2023. And if there's anyone that does not have A4E access, please let us know. So the first thing you see there is your TEA Accountability Data Summary. So this gives you your overall, your component, your scale score, and then your rating for all of the domains. All right? It also will tell you if your school is identified as a school for improvement. That's with our federal. And then it's also going to tell you if your school has any distinctions. And those distinctions are awarded for achievement in areas based off performance relative to a group of campuses of similar type, size, etc. It is not your comparison group. Those are not the same things.
Is that document in the document in A4E?
Yes, it should be your first one. So accountability. And the one that's in A4E, 2020, 23, 22, 23.
Thank you.
Because these are last year's. The one that's in A4E, so this is what it's going to look like when you get it from TEA. The one that is in 22, 23. It's just missing the ratings, but that's why we handed you that paper when you came in, because I know you all like to see that letter grade there. So that's why we gave you the paper when you walked in, because that has that same information for you. All right, and so this is your overall summary. Here's where you can see what was your component score for each domain, what letter grade did you get for each domain, and then what was your overall grade for your campus. Something else we want you to be cognizant of, for your PEEN snapshot for your domains, you are held accountable for students who test in the campus who were enrolled on the prior fall snapshot day.
There's a lot of questions coming up about why on your handout it says 2023 internal calculations and why your ratings are not in A4E. Remember, the state is under an injunction from a judge that they cannot release the A through F. They can release the data. So the data has come straight from the state. That's what you're seeing in A4E. The letter grade was calculated in HISD by the staff standing right over there. Utilizing the data from the state and the methodology that we're reviewing today. So that is calculated by us, that was not provided by TEA.
Yes, and so that's why all of these documents say internal calculations. That's why it says not for public, not for publication, all right? Because TEA did not release that this year, but we still wanted, administration still wanted you all as campus leaders to have access to your data from last year. It is, no. So again, August 13th, Houston ISD will get 2024 accountability ratings. On August 15th, the state will release them publicly. That is happening in less than a month. August 13th, Houston ISD will get them. August 15th, they will be released publicly. So on August 13th, we will get them. They will go to the superintendent. As soon as he says, they can be released, then we will work on getting them uploaded into A4E for you. And there will be an alert from A4E that will go out to let you know as soon as we get them uploaded. But in case it takes a little time, August 15th, anyone in the world can go and see how your school did this past year. All right, so we're going to go into domain 1, our student achievement domain. Again, for you all, that's 100% STAR, but we've got to remember we're sending those kids on to high school, and so CCMR and graduation rate will be a thing for our high schools. You are sending them up ready to go into those college career and military readiness courses and pass those tests. All right, for our STAR component, it is the average of the 3 performance levels across all grades and all test versions. That includes our STAR 6 through 8, our STAR EOC, and our STAR Alt, right? And that is all students at or above approaches, at or above meets, and at master's grade level. So remember, our approaches students count once. Our meets count twice because if they meet, they also approached. Our master's students count 3 times because if they mastered, they also met, they also approached. Oops, so sorry. So, what score can you get? So, if we get 100% of our students to approaches grade level. Remember, approaches counts once. 100% of our students get to approaches grade level. What is our score going to be? But we get no masters, no meets. What letter grade would that campus be? So if we're looking at middle school, right here in the middle, these are the component scores you need. As a middle school, what is your rating? What is your component score going to be? What letter grade are you going to be? A D. Because if we have 100% of our students earning 1 point divided by 3 areas, it's going to be 33. You need a 32 to be a D. You need a 38 to be a C. So if we're saying 100% of our students at approaches, that is still a component score of a D. What about if we get 100% to masters? You're going to be an A. Okay, so master's grade, meets grade level, master's grade level. You'll notice all of the data that we've looked at this year when the superintendent is reviewing the STAR data, he reviewed meets grade level. He did not look at approaches because meets grade level is where we want to be. Meets grade level is what you need in order to get the component score that you're going to need in the accountability system. Right? So the next thing you'll see on your data tables after your summary is going to be your calculation report. So this calculation report is how you see, again, overall, across all grade levels, all test types, how did your students do? So it's going to tell us our total number of tests for each subject. It's going to then tell us the total number at approaches grade level, meets grade level, master's grade level. And then you're going to get on the far right-hand side, you're going to get your percentages, and then that component score at the bottom. Right, so again, that is your total of all grade levels, STAR Alt 2, and your STAR EOCs. All right, your next data table you're going to see is going to be your STAR component data table accountability groups. And so again, if we look at all subjects, it's going to tell us percent, approaches grade level, meets, master's grade level. And then if you want to get a little deeper into it, it also gives us, again, the accountability group, so you can look at some of your student groups there by race, ethnicity. If you want to look at your reading language arts, so again, all your reading language arts, what did that look like? Percent at approaches, meets, masters. It gives you that for each subject. And then the last table that you'll see is going to be your additional student groups. Again, this is where you get into your student populations. And so we're going to have our economically disadvantaged, our EBs, our special education. And so again, it's going to give us approaches, meets, and masters, the percentage of students that were in that student population group that approach, meets, masters for each test. All right, so we'll have a little reflection for you all. So the student outcomes in domain 1 that are affected by my work include, and in order to impact these outcomes, I can change my behavior. So I want you to kind of talk with those at your table. What will be your responses to these 2 questions? All right, very quickly, can I get 2 tables to kind of share out what was your discussion on to impact these outcomes? What behavior changes as campus leaders do you need to make?
The high quality instruction alignment is happening in the classroom.
Yes. So high quality instruction and that there's alignment, so that good first time instruction for our students.
How about tracking performance, academic performance, tracking?
Yes, so tracking our students' performance. So not getting to the end and being surprised how they do on the test, but knowing throughout how are our students doing. I think another table back here said taking that data and making sure we're making adjustments based on when we're tracking. So not just looking at the data, but taking it and doing something with it, because we don't want to have data for the sake of data, right? We want to make sure that we are either saying, you know what, this is working, we should continue it, or we might need to go back, regroup, and make an adjustment and pivot. All right, so you have your campus data tables. So want to give you about 10 minutes. And I want you to go and look at your domain 1 calculation tables, right? And I want you to decide what are going to be the priority areas for your campus based on these data tables. So when you look at that overall, and then you go and you look at your reading, your math, your science, your social study, reading, math, social studies. Middle school. Okay, what should be a priority area for you this school year? So, are there any questions, comments, or concerns about domain 1 before we move on to domain 2? All right. Domain 2, our student progress. So, again, school progress. So, 2A is our academic growth. That is 100% star. 2B is our relative performance. For you all is 100% star. But remember, for our high schools where you are sending your students, it is going to be 50-50, their star and their college career military readiness. So academic growth. So when we look at, we know that the TA has made changes to how they're calculating academic growth. So gone are the days of a kid has this score that they have to meet in order to show growth. Now we have our different levels. So our low and high did not meets and approaches, our meets, our masters. So when we look at this green shaded 1-point box, what student outcomes are valued in domain 2A? And this is a think, pair, share. So looking at where are our green ones? And so again, the way we're reading this chart, prior year's performance, so we're reading this side first and then we're going over. So if I'm starting here, my low did not meet to get to a green box. They need to be high did not meet, grade level, or low approaches grade level on. Okay, if I come down to my meets grade level, in order to get to that green box, I come all the way over here to meets grade level. I look at my master's grade level students, I come over, my green box is master's grade level to get to that green one. So again, quick think, pair, share. What student outcomes are valued in domain 2A based on where those green boxes are located? Ooh, so for some of our students, it's growth. And then what was that second part you said?
Not digressing.
Not digressing. Right? So when we get those kids to the meets and the masters, We've got to keep them there. All right, and so our domain 2A is only our reading and our math. And so, because they have to have a score from one year to the next. And so, yes, that is exactly what we want you to think about. So, gone are the days of, these are my bubble kids. Every kid is a bubble kid. Because you can't spend all your time trying to grow your low kids, and then your kid who made meets last year isn't able to get meets again. Or your kid who made masters last year digresses and they go down to meets, because then you're not getting any points. Now, there is an additional credit, or 1/4 of a point, for moving a student from does not meet to approaches. So I've heard a lot of conversations already about your interventions, what you're doing with those, what is it, HB, was it 14, 16 now? Okay, it changes a lot. Okay, so your HB 14, 16 kids, so these are those students. So you do get an additional 1/4 point for each of those students, but I want you to be careful chasing those 1/4 points. Because for every kid that you get a 1/4 point for, right, so let's say you have a kid who was at masters, they dropped down to meets. How many kids would you need to get a 1/4 point in order to make up for that one kid that dropped from masters? You need 4 kids. So again, every kid is a bubble kid. Every kid has something they need to work on. Every kid needs an intervention. Because it's not worth it to chase those 1/4 points and you're not doing anything for your meets and master students. Our component score that you need, so for middle school, the cut score is an 80. And then also, I know a lot of times you all want to know, how do we know what score students needed to be in that low and high approaches? It is going to change every year. TEA is going to release those cut scores each year. So they just released them for this past year a few weeks ago. And so those are now available, but it will change every year. So again, it's about where the kid was last year. They need to move up a performance level this next year. All right, so your calculation report. So for this one, we're going to have the total number of points earned at a 1. Then it's going to tell us our accelerated learners, so the 1/4 of a point, how many you got, times 0.5, our calculation, and then our sum of total growth plus the accelerated learners, and then total test evaluated. Then it breaks it down. So we get our annual growth for both reading and math. So this is the one we're used to, right? We know both of those. So our students who earn the full point, our students who earn a half point, our students total test earning a point, so on. And then they give you your accelerated learners also. So this one is new because our accelerated learners are new. And so it's going to tell us our count, total number of tests that earned 0 points, 1 point, and then the total number of tests that were evaluated. So the total number of tests that were eligible for that 1/4 of a point. So that's the total number of your HB 14, 16 kids. All right? The other thing it's going to show us, and so this is that table with, again, that green, right? And so this is your calculation report. Again, you can see 0, half points, 1 point. And so again, we read this, starting at the left, moving over and looking up. So for this campus, from low did not meets, there were 16 students who stayed there. They didn't get a point. They had 12 students who went from low did not meets to high did not meets. They had 6 students that went from low did not meets to low approaches. None went to high approaches, but they had 4 students who went from low did not meets to high to meets grade level, right? And so again, you're going to read this from the left and then look up. It gives you your number of students in each one and then how many points they got. And then down at the bottom for our accelerated learners, it's going to tell us again our did not meets and then how many students we had that fell into each category of approaches, meets, masters, and who stayed at did not meets. All right. Domain 2B, our relative performance. And so with this one, we have our star for our middle schools, our percentage economically disadvantaged, right? So higher rates of economically disadvantaged students, this is going to determine where you are on this axis. And then based on your star component score will be where you fall here, right? So campuses with fewer economically disadvantaged students, on average, they should have higher levels of student achievement. And then with more, they tend to have lower levels. And so this is kind of the equalizer that the state uses. All right? So the way that's going to look in your summary report is you're going to see the bottom of the graph. So your x-axis is going to be your economically disadvantaged percentage, and then you will find that. So for this campus, it was 96.3. And then you're going to look up. They're taking that component score from STAR. It was a 47 for this campus, so that is where they fall. All right, so now, again, reflection. Student outcomes that are valued in Domain 2. So what student outcomes do we think are valued in Domain 2?
Growth.
Growth? Just growth? Is it growth for a certain student population? Growth and maintenance. So for some students, it is going to be growth. For other students, it is going to be maintenance. That is what the TEA wants you to know now. It is not just about growth. Because think about it. A lot of our elementary and middle schools, you have relied on Domain 2A to be the one that counts for that 70% because it's best of Domain 1, 2A, 2B. Domain 2A is your bread and butter. But TEA said, great, that's wonderful. Continue to grow your students. But also, you've got to maintain those meets and those masters. All right? And then, in order to impact these outcomes, I can change my behavior by. So, as a campus leader, what behavior changes do you need to make to ensure that you are growing and maintaining your students? All right. So, I'm going to give you some time again to look at your campus data tables. All right? And again, this is just a warm-up. So this is for you to look at what did your data look like in the 22-23 school year so that when you get the data in a month, you're ready to hop on that and see what did you do this past school year. And really, we want you to look at this 22-23 data so you can see what was going on at my campus that year. And then when you get your 23-24 data, you can see what changes did I make and did those things work? Are there things that we did that we should continue because I saw a difference in this data that I'm looking at today, and then when I get the data a month from now, I saw a difference and there was growth. Or I saw that we were stagnant. So whatever it was we did, it didn't quite work. We need to make some tweaks for next year. What are some priority areas? Do you want to share your priority area? Because I liked it.
Our priority area is going to be, like you said, to make sure those kids don't regress, right? The ones that are at meets and masters, that they maintain.
Yes.
We lost a lot of points because of that.
Yes, so she said at her campus they lost a lot of points because their meets and master's students didn't maintain. I think you had about 122 on one test who were at masters and only like 36 stayed there. So you're leaving points there if you're not making sure that your high achieving students are also receiving those interventions, are also staying high achieving, getting that high level of rigor. Right, anything else around Domain 2 before we move to Domain 3? All right, Domain 3, this is our closing the gaps. All right, so that is STAR. For you all, that is going to be your growth again. And then our TELPASS, right, our EL proficiency. Again, I left on there the fact that your high schools, when you send those kids up, their CCMR, college career military readiness, and their 4-year graduation rate, whether those kids are able to get out of high school in 4 years. That is what they are rated on. And so again, just be cognizant of you're sending these kids, and these are the expectations that your high school colleagues are being held to. In AAC, we started calling this a tale of two systems because Domain 3 meets the ESSA requirement. So that's our federal Every Student Succeeds Act, right? So this is how the Texas Education Agency satisfies the Department of Education's requirements, right? So there's two different calculations here. There is state accountability, and then there is federal accountability. So we can have a campus that is an A-rated campus with the state of Texas that is under federal supports because they haven't met the standard for federal accountability. And so we're going to get a little deeper into what those two things are. So our student groups for Domain 3. So we know our minimum size used to be 25. They've brought it down to 10. So if you have 10 tests in any of these groups, then that group will be counted. And so that's all our race ethnicity groups. That is our economically disadvantaged, our current and former special education, our emergent bilingual, both current and monitored, our continuously enrolled, that's being enrolled with the district for 3 consecutive years, and then our new group is the highly mobile. Highly mobile students are our homeless students, our migrant students, and our students in foster care. But those students will only count once. So thinking about some of your populations on your campus, your highly mobile group might also be your all students group. Okay? And so just thinking about, you're going to have kids that are going to hit in multiple student groups. And it is 10 tests. Once you get 10 tests, they are there. All right, so let's go deeper into our Domain 3 state accountability. So these are our weights for closing the gaps. So I want you to tell me, I want you to have a quick table talk. What is the state of Texas telling us that they're valuing based on how they're weighting our closing the gaps? So we have our academic achievement, our growth, our STAR component, and then our EL proficiency. So look at some things that are included there. One of the things I've always found interested in this, when it comes to our academic achievement, in Domain 1, it's all tests, all scores. In Domain 3, what are they looking at for your academic achievement? Meets and higher on your reading and your math. So again, when we're talking about, oh, we've got 100% approaches, is that going to help you in our accountability system? No. All right? Our STAR growth. What are they telling us with STAR growth? What do you find interesting there? It's weighted more heavily than everything else. So again, when we're talking about growing and maintaining, again, they're reiterating that because that's where they're looking then now into your individual student groups. Are you doing that for all of your student groups? Okay, and then our STAR component is 10%, our TELPAS composite ratings, our EL proficiency, 10%. So participation rate, there is a 95% participation rate that is required. And this is calculated using the number of students scheduled to test, not your PEEN snapshot. So you have a student that enrolls on April 1st, and that reading test is April 23rd, they are in this 95%. And remember, it is 10 tests. You get 10 tests in a student group, this 95% is coming into play. All right, so if it falls below that 95%, the denominator will be adjusted to include necessary students. So let's say you end up getting to 10 students in your 2 or more races category. One student doesn't show up to test. What's your participation rate? 90%. And so now what they're going to do is they're going to add in a failing test until they get you to that 95%. And so that's why we've got to pay attention to our student groups, because again, once you get to 10 tests, this comes into play. So I want you to have a think, pair, share. What is the agency telling us they're valuing here by putting this 95% participation rate into our accountability system? Every student is counted. Every student has to test. So it's not just, oh, these are my PEEM snapshot students. I'm not going to worry about them because they're not going to count. They're telling us those kids are still going to count. So gone are the days of just give me the list of my PEEM students. Just give me the scores for my PEEM students. TEA is constantly telling us you have to concentrate on every single student that walks into your building every day. All right, so for our state accountability, it is going to be your all students group. It is going to be your high focus group, which is your economically disadvantaged, your EB, special education, and your highly mobile, and that's an unduplicated count. So if you have a student who is EB and special ed, and they're homeless and they're economically disadvantaged, although they meet all of those criteria, they will only count once in that group. Right? And then it's going to be your 2 lowest race ethnicity groups from the previous year. Okay? And so the way it's changed, we're now on a point system here. And so this is where I'm going to tell you, do not try to calculate points. It is not worth it for you to try to calculate points. It's not worth it for you to try to say, okay, I have my interim target, I didn't meet that, but I showed minimal growth. I got to see what the minimal growth is, because the thing is those targets change every year, because those targets are going to the 2037. So that means what the target was in 2023, we're now another year. So then you have to decide, do I add a year? Do I take off a year? You're doing all of that math. It's not worth it for you as a principal. We have an assessment, accountability, and compliance team. We have people that do these calculations. They are paid to do it. Allow them to do it. All right? But what can you do? How can you know where you need to set your goals, what your targets should be? So for elementary, middle, and high school, the state has provided these tables. And so these tables tell us what is our 2023 target, what is the next interim target, so that's the 27-28 school year through 31-32, and then the long-term target is a 37-38 school year. So they have it for each of our domain 3 criteria areas. And so what we want to look at is the target gets you 3 points. So if you hit the target, that's 3 points. You didn't have to do any math. You just had to look at the number and say, I need 44% of all of my students to get meets grade level on reading. That gets me 3 points. You have a goal now, and you didn't have to do any math. I'm going to tell you, I'm the former reading and English teacher, and so I love that I don't have to do any math to set that goal. Okay? If we're thinking at, all right, I've already met my 44% at meets, I want the 4 out of 4 points. What is the long-term target? Long-term target is 72%. That gets you your 4 points.
How are they calculating those targets?
So they use the baseline, and so they use across the state of Texas, what were the scores in, Rebecca, do you remember when the baseline year was? Was it like 20, I don't remember the baseline year.
I know they were using
Post-COVID.
but for the other targets, I would have to look it up.
Yeah. And so they did a baseline, and then they set the current target, then our 28 to 32 target, and then the long-term targets. All right. And so again, If you just look at what's the target, have I met it? If I haven't, that's my goal. If I've met that target, then I can move to the interim target, or I can move down to the long-term target. That way you're setting your campus up for where they're going to need to be in the future. All right. Our EB proficiency. So this is our TEL pass. So this is how our students are performing on their TEL pass assessment. All right. So because we had to change to the writing test, because students are now writing, doing the full TEL pass on the computer, the results will be evaluated at the domain level in place of the composite rating. So they just need to meet the criteria in at least 2 of the 4 domains. They are continuing that for this year because they want to be able to, again, get some baseline data before they set where what the criteria is going to be for the composites. So student needs to be at the advanced performance level. They need to advance a performance level from the prior year in 2 out of 4 areas. Or they need to get advanced high, or for our TEL Pass Alt, they need to get basic fluency. And so you get another year of they only need to advance in 2 out of 4. Next year, they may go back to the composite. But for this year, advance into 2 out of 4. Okay, so it's going to remain the same as 2023, so they can get 2 years of writing data, right? So it's recommended that they move back for 2025. We don't know. So when you see these scores on what day? August 13th, that is what it's going to be based on. 2 out of the 4. I see some smiling faces there. Okay, we have another year. All right, so what does our calculation report look like? All right, so it gives us all of our areas, right? So it tells us the total number of points that we're going to earn, right? So whether you got 1, 2, 3, 4 points, the total possible points you could have gotten, what is the component score, and then the weight, and then the total points that you got. So what if you demonstrated expected growth for each evaluated group? So let's say you got 2 points for each evaluated group. So remember, we have our all students, 2 race ethnicity groups, and then our high focus times our reading, our math. Doesn't even matter.
It doesn't even matter. You can get 4 possible points.
And you only get
and
2.
You get 2. What's your percentage?
So where would we fall for middle school? You'd be a C. What if we get 3 points? So then when you're thinking about your goals for your domain 3, where should you set them? At minimum, where should you set them? Getting 3 out of 4 points. And how are you going to do that? You're simply going to look at what is the target. You're just going to look at what is the target. That's how you're setting that goal. That gets you 3 out of 4 points. That gets you an A. All right? All right, anything around our state accountability before we move into federal for domain 3? Yes.
Is TEL Pass all or nothing? Like you either get the 10 points or you don't?
Yes. All right. Anything? Well, no, because they still have the 1, 2, 3, 4 points. So either you meet the target, get the 3, you, yeah. So yeah, it's still the 1, 2, 3, 4 points. All right. Okay. Federal accountability. So Here is why we said you could get an A with the state, but miss it for the federal. So the federal looks at every group. So for the state, a lot of times people will say, well, what are my 2 lowest race ethnicity groups from the previous year? That's what the state looks at. The federal government looks at if you have 10 tests in any of these groups, they will be evaluated by the federal government. All right? So it's used to determine our students who are targeted support and improvement, additional support and improvement campuses, additional targeted supports campuses. So expected growth is if you get the 2 points, and that is considered adequate progress. So if you've been around education a while, you have that adequate yearly progress, that AYP that was always there, it's still here. So if you get 2 points in the Texas system, the federal government says that you have met your adequate progress for that student group. So expected growth, again, meets expected growth, that's getting that 2 points. So our interim target, we already know is worth 3 points. Our long-term target is worth 4 points. Calculation to see our 2 points is our current year rate minus the prior year's rate, and it needs to be greater than or equal to the next year interim target minus the prior year rate divided by 6. Again, you don't need to do that math. It's already on the chart for you. Okay? That's the next interim target. That's how we know what goes there. But again, you don't need to do that math. Okay? So, identification for federal supports. There are 3 different levels. So, our comprehensive support and improvement schools, those are schools who are writing our targeted improvement plans. That is the bottom 5% of Title I campuses for Domain 3 scale score, or they have less than a 66.7% 6-year grad rate when we get to our high schools who have that graduation rate, or 3 consecutive years at additional targeted supports campus. Additional targeted supports campus is a targeted support and improvement campus, and they have a 0 or a 1 point in all evaluated indicators for a student group. And then our targeted support and improvement schools are consistently underperforming in 3 areas in the same group. And we're going to look at what does that look like and how do you know if you're there or if you're close to being there. And consistently underperforming means you have 1 or more student groups that do not meet the same interim benchmark goal for 3 consecutive years. And so we're going to look at what does that look like on a data table. So I believe it's the last data table on your report shows you where you are. So you're looking for the areas where you may have 3 areas of consecutive shaded red. So 3 years. And so across, so when you look, we have our student groups, and then this is the count of indicators missed for 3 consecutive years. So you have a number across the top here. When you get to that very last table, you have a number across the top here. So it may say 1, 2, 0. So that is the number of consecutive years at missing the target. Okay? And so a student group that misses the target in at least the same 3 indicators for 3 consecutive years is identified for targeted supports and improvement. So for this example, for the EB students for this school, they missed it for 3 years in their meets grade level for reading. They missed it for 3 years in their meets grade level for math. And this was a high school. This was their CCMR. They missed the target for their EB students meeting CCMR for 3 consecutive years. But when we look at their overall state accountability, for student achievement, they were a B. For Domain 2A, they were an A. For 2B, they were an A. For closing the gaps, Domain 3, they were an A. So TEA said they were an A, but they are under federal supports because their EB population did not meet the target in 3 areas for 3 years. And so again, it's that very last table. So that tells you your areas where you have missed the target. And then you're also looking at, yes, so those are the areas, wherever you see red, that means you missed the target. All right, so quick table talk. What differences between state and federal and the state and federal systems do you notice? I want you to reflect on these things. What do I need to know and retain about the accountability system as an instructional leader on your campus? What do I need to stop doing as an instructional leader based on what we've talked about today about the accountability system and the outcomes that are valued by the state? And then what are my next steps as the leader of your campus and why? So I'll give you these last 5 minutes to reflect on those 3 questions. So we do have some resources that are available. There's a Canvas course, the Accountability Canvas course that our CTM back there, Ms. Lebecki, made with videos that walks you through this. So if you just want to have another session and go through this again, there's some videos that you could watch. You can pick just one area. I want to go over this again and do all of those things. Again, how you get to your data tables. And so again, we are assessment, accountability, and compliance. You can feel free to email research@houstonisd.org. And that will come to our research inbox, and we can get any of your questions or requests to the right department. So thank you very much.